Hey, Deb,
Hey, Brad.
got a great story for you today. So, I was just talking with one of my students here at
Mhm.
CMU, and she was describing her internship experience, and she did, performed well, extremely well as an intern, and she was given a return offer to work full time with the company,
Okay.
which is a success story by itself. But the funny part, and the part that we'll explore a little bit today, is that she was told by her hiring manager
Mhm.
that I knew during our first meeting that I would hire you full time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
great. Yeah, because I just wish, Brad, I created a really positive impression in my day one. I know I struggle a bit, and I know that's something that a lot of product managers also struggle because the quintessential question is you have landed a product management job. Now what?
so
Right?
now what exactly?
Right? And yeah, I think we'll dive into that story and talk more about it. But before that, let's just do our regular housekeeping stuff, Brad. So for our subscribers, please like, comment, and subscribe wherever you are watching us, listening to us using any podcast. We are live on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcast at. And feel free to provide us feedback or provide reviews, comments. We are always open for feedback. We always want ideas. It's a product that we are trying to build. So please help us with anything that you have for us to share. You can also email us at theproductsignal@gmail.com. But with that, why don't we begin with I don't know if you can recall, Brad, how was your day one as a PM? I know mine, but would love to know yours.
Well, day one started before day one. Day
Uh-huh.
one was, I would describe it as when I got the offer and was deciding whether to accept it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so in this situation, it's a matter of what do I need to understand about the product
Hmm.
and what will my potential for impact be? And starting to think about not just where do I show up and who do I talk to and who's going to give me my computer, all these things, but it was really this is you're kind of setting up the chessboard when
Hmm.
the offer comes in. And everyone thinks that the offer means that the game is over, but in reality, the game has just begun. And in my mind, for any new job, you start the second that you've agreed, or maybe even before you've agreed, that I accept.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that goes into that decision. There's a lot of understanding necessary to know what your situation, what your responsibility expectations will be, and including, is there anything I need to study before day one?
Yeah. Uh, I think that's a very important point, right? When we talk about day one, we are not talking about day one when you begin with a company or a startup. It's not the orientation, it's not that. What we're talking about is day one as truly a product manager once all your formalities are done. And what you're bringing out, Brad, is an important factor is there's a lot of prep that should happen before day one. And I think I have done that mistake where I was like, okay, I've got an offer, accepted an offer. I know I'm starting on this date and I'll figure it out, which is true. And we are not saying that you can do something extensively or, in fact, depending on the job role and the job function you have, your companies might not provide you a lot of information upfront about the product or like, or the product strategy. But what we're talking here is just having that mindset and attitude as to when I go into the product, how well am I prepared for day one to create an impression? Because first the impression or first week or the initial impression lasts long. And as a PM, it's all about relationship building and trust, at least for the initial few weeks or few months as you start to prove out, right?
Yeah, and I, at least for my last two jobs specifically, as soon as the offer came in, I started building roadmaps for myself, like
Mhm.
understanding what's possible, what the company needs, what the area, the team needs, what the customers need, and sketching that out like like going into day one with a plan that's already like I'll specifically like here at CMU, I had the offer to direct this program, this master's
Mhm.
program, and the offer was kind of like the way the job description was written, it was mostly tactical things. It was mostly operational things. But I knew in reality because I went and interviewed students that I knew I would be inheriting and I talked to them about what their pain points were. And I came in like there was the job description and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to do these other things because this is what the program really needs.
Uh-huh.
And and like imagine imagine your boss's reaction when you already understand the context before they even have to introduce it to you. Like
Yeah.
that's forward thinking. That's like aggressively taking grasp and control of the situation, which is so rare that when people see it, they're almost in disbelief that I can't
You-
believe
yeah.
that you've already started thinking about and drafting plans and all these things related to this.
Yeah, and to be very honest, I'm pretty sure, Brad, it wouldn't have taken a week's effort to pull that information or to frame your your mindset or your thought process for that. It's a handful, I think, hours before you join the job, but it creates a significant bar
Mhm.
or impression in front of your leaders as they see you, as they hear you, as they try to onboard you into the team.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that's what we are focused here, right? So I think taking a step back, if I think of the mindset, I think many times you have landed the job already. So now before you're no longer judged on your skill set or your attribute or your personal output. You're judged by how your team performs, how your product team performs, how your product team, technical, all combined, the org performs and all of that. So that's a very strong attribute as you're thinking of product managers. And most of the product managers do not have direct reportees, but you work with a lot of different people, maybe senior or junior as well. So that's like part one. And the part two, which I talk about, I think we talk about it a lot, is curiosity is significantly stronger than what you can control. You cannot
Mhm.
control a lot of things till you actually gain the trust of the organization or your team members or your managers or leaders. But what you can absolutely do is be curious in understanding why a decision has been taken, understanding why this product decision was taken, understanding why the engineers chose to build the product to this spec instead of the other spec. Who are the users, key stakeholders, what decision mechanism had happened in the past. So that goes a long way. And I think the third point is being confident, uh, but being humble at the same time. You shouldn't appear as if you will figure out uh, what the product is or what the next product feature is. So, what I mean by that is asking questions, but being polite and humble about that without an impression or without giving an impression that you will figure it out. Right.
Yeah, yeah. No, nobody wants. You don't want to give an impression that you're a know-it-all on the first day, but at the same time, you don't want to be seen as the person who's going to sit back passively until they're told what to do. So it's always better to have a concept of your own plan and something that you've given thought to in advance and can intelligently discuss and ask follow-up questions as you learn the context of your position, your team, your company, the products, the features, all these things that are important right now, so you can understand the current state as you prepare to move into the future state.
Yeah, that's a great segue because I knew touch base, what to do before day one. So we talked a little bit about day one, but what to do before day one. I think one of the key things that I think, Brad, what you mentioned is understanding your company's latest product update, what are the quarterly goals or press releases,
Hmm.
anything that the company has done, so that at least you are in that same strategic mindset where the company is operating at. And for CMU, it was more like, okay, the program, the history, and all of that for you. But for, let's say, for a big tech company or a publicly listed company, it's the information is more widely available versus privately or startups, you can actually get some press releases. And also, I think for smaller companies, it's always really important. It goes a long way to meet with people. I
Hmm.
think it's the same with the bigger companies, universities, etc. as well, but it's more essential for privately held startups because it says a lot more about where they are headed and for you to understand and imbibe that not only strategy but understand the culture of the organization,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's important. You don't want to go in on your first day as an empty vessel with no knowledge of the industry, no knowledge of anything. At the same time, you don't want to go in assuming you know everything and there's nothing to teach me because I've already figured it out. It's a balance, but preparing yourself with prerequisite knowledge and understanding, even understanding who's who, maybe connecting with people on LinkedIn in advance, all
Yep.
these different things, they set you up so that you're not starting cold. You're in a position where you can project the message, I'm here on day one to
Yep.
start making an impact, and I've set myself up for that.
Yeah, and I think part of that you already do when you are interviewing for the company, just to do some research or
Yeah,
background research, but you only have this much time available, right? And uh, you can be generic and you can have a lot of assumptions during your interview period.
yeah,
But as you're joining a company, you it has to be more grounded in reality and in the next short term to long term phase. If you can, at least talk to product leaders or tech leaders in the company, or specific to your team, your managers before in. And more importantly or not, understand the product portfolio or your competition, your users and stakeholders, right? Just having that map, like sometimes just drawing a very simple concept map goes a long way. It helps you answer a lot of different things. And in my mind, I don't know, Brad, I'm a very visual person. So for me, I have this mental map, and I know I'm very chaotic in my mind that way. But as I talk to people, I start drawing graphs on few things. And I think, but the basic fundamental mental map is always there before going into any room.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot you can do. This episode is about day one, but really there's a lot you can do to set yourself up for a successful day one, and have a plan for that first day. You know, kind of moving into that stage, know that know that you want to have time with your manager, for example, and have questions prepared. Like, don't just go in cold and, talk about the weather or, the commute that day. Be ready to get down to understanding how I can contribute or how I can accelerate my learning curve because I'm here to make an impact.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is when I joined enterprises, before I joined enterprises, or when I was actually had a handful of offers, I spent a lot of time talking to my hiring managers to really understand what their key priorities are and to also understand the company culture,
Hmm.
right? And that helps a lot. And you can still continue to do that before even joining. And trust me, a lot of people take or accept the offer, and many times it's a very short duration in the sense that you're joining in next 2 to 4 weeks, so you want to take a break and all of that. But even when you're scheduling maybe a 1 or 2 calls or meetings or virtual chats with the team or manager, it goes a long way to show how much excited you are to join the company. And if possible, just using the product or talking to users, if that's possible. Not every company will allow you access to it, but at least you can do your background research.
For sure. And the beauty of all of this is it doesn't take a lot of extra effort to stand out in a big way because
Yep.
Almost nobody does this. Almost nobody thinks in advance like this. They just decide they'll show up on day one, talk to the receptionist, and find their desk, and someone will tell them what to do. But if you're taking these proactive steps, and the spoiler alert to the hook is that the reason that her manager knew that he was going to offer her a full-time role
Mhm.
at the end, like on day one at our first meeting, I'm sure you're the type of person I'm going to employ, because she went into her first meeting with that manager with an agenda. It was that simple, because nobody
Right.
does that.
Yep.
That's how you stand out.
Yeah. Uh, all right. So we talked a little bit about before your day one. So, but for day one, what do you think is the key goal for day one as a PM?
For me, the day one is really about understanding who's who and what are their motivations. So
Mhm.
everybody on your team is motivated by something. They have pain points. They have things that get them excited, things that they don't want to deal with. Um, an example would be like finding let's okay, who's on my engineering team, and if I can schedule time with that person, just to whether it's a coffee or whether it's an actual meeting to find out the context, what can I find out about what makes this person tick, and
Mhm.
how can we use that to build the relationship and understand working styles, all that type of thing, all those types of things. Assuming you're a junior level PM, who is my closest, whether explicit or implicit, mentor?
Mhm.
So, how can I quickly find product managers who know how it's done at this company and find out what they use, how they are effective, what methods do they use, what types of communication are most effective in this corporate culture? Those are two huge ones to me. Is really like we talk about it in class, and I know that almost nobody does it in real life, but like stakeholder maps and
Mhm.
figuring out, like keeping track of who I will need to rely upon as I go forward, and how do I contact them? How do I relate to them and build rapport and basically recruit people to be on my team?
Mhm. And yeah, I think understanding who's who and the intent as to why you want to know that person. And the right person to advise you or guide you is your manager, your hiring manager, or your product leader. But if you get time with them, with someone senior other than your team, in engineering team, do spend time. And I think going into your first meeting, to your point, uh, whether it's a hard agenda or just with an intent to know about the product, about the team, about the culture and the company. I would say
Hmm.
the four things matter.
Hmm.
And about the product, I think it can be very specific as to what's working well, what is the biggest pain point, what is the long term strategy. If this strategy is done, like how hard it is to implement a strategy, how hard it is to get things done. Understanding the processes will help you understand different people, or at least
Hmm.
identify different people whom you want to talk to. And that's sort of, I think, Brad, what you're alluding to is creating sort of a roadmap for you to meet with different people. But you can only know that when you are meeting with key people to know what the processes
Right.
are and products and strategy and everything else and whatever, right? Uh, the other thing which I have experienced is I feel like nervousness is a spectrum. Everybody is nervous when they're doing some things, but many people, the way they get over it is by repeating to do it over and over again. And no matter uh, like how experienced you are, when you join a new job, you're always nervous and you have that sort of nervous energy. And what happens when you're nervous? You go back to your natural instinct, right? Sometimes your natural instinct helps. Maybe for me in a brainstorming session, my natural instinct really clicks. But sometimes it can be very overwhelming for your team members who are not used to maybe someone being so inquisitive, who are maybe not someone who uh, who is talking about what are the different solutions that are possible on day one, with just understanding at a very surface level. So I would say try to manage those pieces. And also, as you're talking to your hiring manager, it's a very different relationship than when you're talking to your engineering manager or a software engineer or a design or a strategist or a marketing person. And if you can meet with all six of those people, great. But just be very sure that if you're engaging with someone, you have a mental map of what questions and what your intention should be, because you will be nervous. You will fall back to your, when you fall back to your, fundamental attributes, you have some weapons for you to utilize to have a very meaningful conversation out of that.
Yeah, and this kind of one of the there are a handful of tricks that I like that are
Mhm.
kind of universally effective. And as you're meeting new coworkers, new people on your team or related to your team in some way, a great way to build rapport or even understand how they view the work is ask them, what advice do you have for me in this role? And people love giving advice, and B, people love to help somebody who's humble enough to ask that directly.
Uh-huh.
And now, if I do these things that they've advised, there's a trust built into our relationship going forward. And another sort of caveat to that is, like, one way to do that is through your manager ought to be your first lifeline, right? On
Hmm.
day one, especially. But managers are busy. So you might not even meet with your manager on day one. Your manager might be traveling at a conference or at a
Hmm.
client visit. So that level of independence where you have to seek out people who you'll work with, or senior PMs who have been through this process before, or understand what you're going to need to do or learn to do. You need to be resourceful in terms of building those relationships, even if your primary lifeline isn't available immediately.
Yeah, and that goes to something that I think we covered in our previous episodes: is product managers are have to be inherently self motivated and resilient. So go with an understanding that nobody will have time for you. But if you get 5 minutes with someone, what are the top three things that you would ask and want to know? Right. And uh, the second important aspect is you will have to solve big, abstract, open ended questions with very limited information.
Yeah,
Right. And sometimes you will be uh, part of a bigger product organization, and sometimes you might be the founding product manager as
yeah,
well of a
yeah,
startup. So, but different roles, different job function, but this does not change. One, you have to know the processes. Bigger companies will have processes, but at the same time, you're solving bigger problems either at scale or something new, but with very, very limited guidance.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So if we're to boil this down, Deb,
Hmm.
so what we've established is you need to prepare in advance, prepare before that day one with as
Hmm.
much supplemental and contextual information as possible.
Hmm.
And day one is really probably the most valuable thing in most situations that people can do is begin to build their relationships, right?
Hmm.
And that could be in the form of creating a stakeholder map. Who need who is in my new universe? What
Hmm.
do they need from me? What do
Hmm.
I need from them? And how are we going to communicate?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would add understanding what the company culture or the culture is
Yeah,
on paper, and then also trying to evaluate it as you're talking to different people
in real life. Yeah,
in real life. Because many times you have nine different culture opinions, or this is the founding pillars, or these are the pillars of our culture. But culture is what? It's basically team working together that that sort of embodies it. And try to find those pieces or nuances, and I think that will help you unpack a lot more about the team and the company and
That
position yourself really well.
that reminds me of a funny story that maybe we can punctuate this with. I remember, and this was maybe 25 years ago. I
Uh-huh.
interviewed with a defense company,
Okay.
and they told me that their training plan is they're going to hand you a manual of regulations that you need to know and specs, and sort of this was their culture because they were a defense company. And
Mhm.
they said it'll take about 3 months to read, and you'll have to stand up to stay awake while you read it.
Oh, all right.
So,
Okay.
so, so, so maybe not the best culture, but that's an extreme example of there will be highly regulatory jobs that you might be eligible for, and it really is about understanding the regulations before you get started on anything.
Yep.
But and then there are startups where there are no rules and you have to make the rules and
Mhm.
everything in between. It's really about figuring out your new situation. I
Yep.
didn't take that job, by the way.
I was going to ask that,
They
Brad, but
warned me. They warned me during the interview.
thanks for clarifying. But I think as we wrap up day one, what we want to tell to our listeners is we have another one coming up in 2 weeks that's focused more on 30, 60, and 90 days. But this is the first episode of many in the series, which is more focused on early stage product managers. In the first series, we covered a lot about navigating the world of product management, especially focused on people who wanted to pivot to PM roles or who have just entered PM roles. Here we go a little bit more tactical, a level deeper into unpacking those pieces. And honestly, just covering topics that we thought if we would have had on our day one would have helped us tremendously as a product manager. And yes, of course, there'll be series. There'll be a lot of AI involved since everything is getting accelerated with usage of AI. But where we would likely end this series would be more focused on how do you move up in your career ladder to a mid level or mid senior level product leader. So with that, uh, please like, comment, and subscribe, and reach us at the product signal at the gmail.com. And thank you.